from the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I am Swaini Gray. A day after UN scientists warned of climate chaos if the world doesn't rapidly cut emissions, Hurricane Michael has been battering Cuba and Central America. The Category 1 storm brought heavy rains and winds of up to 120 kilometers per hour to western Cuba and eastern Mexico. The forecast says it is strengthening to a life-threatening storm and could become a major Category 3 hurricane when it strikes Florida by Tuesday night. The National Hurricane Center in Miami has warned people in the Florida Gulf area to prepare for damaging winds and flash floods.
Taking into account the evolution of this hurricane, Michael, the cyclone alert phase is established for the province of Pinar del Rio and the special municipality of the Isla de la Juventud. The rest of the provinces, Artemisa, Habana, Mayabeque, and Matanzas, continue under an informative phase.
Heavy rains brought by Michael have also battered Central American countries, killing at least 12 people. 4 people are reported to have died in Nicaragua, some of them as they tried to cross rivers swollen by the rains. 6,600 people have been forced to leave their homes, and others have been stuck indoors without food and drinking water after a major river burst its banks. Doctors fear outbreaks of disease from the contaminated water.
The water has reached up to our chest. Inside it has gotten up to the knee and here to the chest. It has reached the patio and inside the drinking water tank. The main thing is that we do not have water now and we have to go far away to find water.
We had enough turkey, chickens, guinea that was all lost because they sleep on a pool and size that got crippled from the water. They fell and were washed away in the water. They starved for the 3 days and died.
The torrential rains caused a mudslide in Honduras, which killed 2 children and their mother. The rain destroyed houses and forced thousands to leave their homes. According to local authorities, 6 people were killed in Honduras and 7,000 were forced to evacuate. In El Salvador, the floods have killed 3 people and caused more than 700 to evacuate. 1 person died in a landslide in the eastern department of Morazan. 2 others were killed by falling trees. The director of civil protection said the bad weather was likely to continue until Wednesday. In Guatemala, heavy rainfall has affected 8 departments, caused the overflow of rivers, and at least 1 disappearance. The National Coordinator for Disaster Relief has called on citizens to be alert and to take precautions. The authorities said that a low-pressure system located in the Atlantic Ocean has strengthened, and rain was expected to increase in the coming day. Rescue units are continuing to search for an 11-year-old child who was swept away by the Patacalpa River in San Marcos. Limiting the level of global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is crucial to sustaining humankind and the world's ecological ecosystem. That's according to the World Meteorological Organization at a press briefing on Monday. The Secretary General said that reducing the scale of climate change should be a key priority around the world. He said a series of catastrophic events that would destroy the ecological environment if temperatures rose by up to 2 degrees Celsius could be avoided if global warming was limited to 1.5 degrees.
So what is the difference between 1.5 degree and 2 degree? And one of the major issues is that there would be 420 million people less suffering because of climate change if we would be able to limit the warming to 1.5 degree level. And we have certain areas in the world which are extremely sensitive. It's the small island states, Mediterranean region, and also sub-Saharan Africa, which are already suffering and will suffer the most in the future in the world. So, for example, China, which is still the biggest emitter, They have been investing the most worldwide to renewable energy, and they see this transition as a business opportunity. For example, the solar technology that is sold in the world.
And earlier we spoke to Gregory Nemeth, Professor of Environmental Studies at the Wisconsin-Madison University, who defends the use of negative emissions technology to prevent global warming. He says these need to be combined with clean energy.
The good news is that we have a lot more tools at our disposal than we did 10 or 20 years ago. Wind power is cheaper, solar power is cheaper, electric vehicles are becoming feasible, but even those is not enough to do what we need to do to reduce emissions in the atmosphere. The problem is that unlike other types of air pollution, like local air pollution that you see in cities, rain and they don't just fall out of the sky in a couple of weeks. Those gases stay in the atmosphere for decades and a century. So if we need to do something about the problem quickly, we need to take CO2 out of the atmosphere directly.
Monday also saw residents of Haiti trying to get back into their daily routines after Saturday's deadly 5.9 magnitude earthquake which struck the country. Buildings on the northwest coast of the country have been decimated because they were not built to withstand disasters. The death toll now stands at 15 people killed with more than 300 injured. Hospitals in Port-de-Paix suffered from damage and a lack of supplies to treat patients. Thousands of Haitians are now living in tents. Rescue agencies are trying to provide support to the victims while President Jovenel Moïse has promised to assist them. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has participated in the 4th Congress of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, which was held together with the 3rd Congress of the PSUV Youth. President Maduro spoke about the economic recovery process and the defeat against the coup attempts which the country has been fighting. He also spoke about the importance of the work that young people in Venezuela in contributing to the political and social stability of the country.
The PSUV anthem ended the Congress of the party where Chavismo was born. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro headed up the event. He says the international right wing is looking for new ways to destabilize Venezuela.
There is a global campaign against Venezuela. It is unbelievable to see. Politicians from the whole world making Venezuela their main target. We should be doing good when we have become the target of fascism at this moment in history.
Maduro regretted what he considers indifference from some political sectors regarding the attack he suffered last August.
I have proven the plans to kill me, and still the right wing is just a witness. A live global TV spectator.
The Venezuelan president talked about the current political scenario in some countries where fascist behavior is returning.
We're able to see nowadays the comeback of fascist figures, xenophobia in the Latin American political framework. They put peace and stability at risk in the whole continent. I have no doubt these fascist countries will try to damage the Bolivarian revolution. I have no doubt either about how they can also damage our people in Latin America.
Maduro says that in Venezuela, it's the people who have the power, the very same people who defend the revolution and the country's democracy, despite the economic war Venezuela is suffering.
Venezuela's interior minister has ordered an investigation into the death of an opposition councillor. On Twitter, Nestor Raverol said that Fernando Alban had been arrested last week in connection with the attempted assassination of President Nicolas Maduro. According to initial reports, Alban was about to be taken to court for an initial hearing when he asked for permission to go to the bathroom. He then threw himself from a window. Raverol charged the public prosecutor and the investigative police with carrying out a thorough investigation. We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute. Welcome back. Brazilian presidential candidate Fernando Haddad has visited the former president Lula da Silva in prison to discuss how to approach the second round of Brazil's presidential election. The Workers' Party candidate says he's optimistic that he will be able to beat the far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro, despite the 17 points difference in the first round. The PT candidate says during these 3 weeks, their 2 projects for Brazil will be properly discussed.
We will have a very important opportunity to compare these 2 proposals so that the voter has an opportunity that, in my opinion, they did not have in the first round. So the opportunity is very important for us.
And Lula da Silva has encouraged Brazilians to support Haddad. Via Twitter, the former president made a call for volunteers to support the Workers' Party candidate. Colombia has registered a 14% increase in children dying of starvation. A report by the Ombudsman's office has rung the alarm, but organizations say that the government is ignoring it. 162 children under the age of 5 died of starvation or related causes between January and September of this year, 21 more compared to the previous year. Organizations are urging the government to take measures. And another social movement leader has been murdered in Colombia. Jaime Rivera was a human rights campaigner and a member of the coca substitution program in the Department of Cauca. He and his 2 sons were killed on Saturday. Rivera's death takes the number of community leaders murdered in Colombia to 474 since 2016. 27 leaders have been killed since President Ivan Duque came into office 2 months ago. An Indigenous Week has begun in Colombia. Organizations from all sectors of society will come together to demonstrate and march in rejection of neoliberal policies of President Ivan Duque.
Leaders of social organizations from all over the country joined Indignation Week in Colombia to reject the breaches of the peace agreement implementation by the national government, the systematic murder of social leaders, and constant violations of human rights.
There has been a lot of unfulfilled agreements on behalf of the government. Lots of student organizations, indigenous people, Afro-Campesino communities have made many demonstrations demanding the right for life, for respect on the guarantee of rights, and against the murders that have been happening.
To this call, students of universities and public institutions from Colombia have joined together. They are declaring a permanent assembly to reject the announcement of the government of Ivan Duque to decrease the budget on education, increase taxes, and make reforms to system participation.
We are going to mobilize with deans, parliamentary teachers, our families to defend educational from all over Colombia. We are facing a serious crisis that needs everyone to get out on the street to tell the government that this generation is not going to let education be privatized.
Campesino sectors, indigenous, Afro, student communities, human rights defenders will all reject through this mobilization the criminalization of social protest. They also decry the possible intervention in Venezuela.
We're worried about the progress of the right in the continent, the issue of intervention towards Venezuela, towards social popular movements in Latin America, and the understanding of the role that Colombia has been playing in this intervention framework with the United States.
On October 10th and 12th, thousands of Colombians will go out onto the streets of the main cities of the country to defend peace, sovereignty, right to education, health, and life.
The teacher strike in Argentina is ongoing with no resolution in sight. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, has the latest.
The teachers' strike continues in Buenos Aires. This conflict has already taken up 34 days of the year, and there still aren't any specific solutions for teachers' salaries. The governor of Buenos Aires, María Eugenia Vidal, has refused to meet the workers. Beyond this, many schools have had classes interrupted because they are dealing with the issues with the buildings. Since an explosion in last August that killed a teacher and a janitor, there's been a lot of concerns over conditions. The outlook isn't encouraging. Strikes will continue until salaries balance with the 45% inflation calculated for 2018. Teachers are living with meager earnings under the poverty line in many cases. Macri is destroying Argentina's public school system.
And in Costa Rica, a national strike continues after Congress approved a series of controversial tax reforms last Friday. It's the fifth week of union-led protests where workers down tools. The tax reform project has been driven by President Carlos Alvarado Quesada. One more vote is needed for final approval of the measure.
Here we are in Justice Square, which is the headquarters of the judicial power. The protest has moved from the assembly to this square because the justice system is one of the institutions to be consulted about the tax reform. Protesters want the courts to reject this package of 4 laws that was approved by 35 against 22 votes last Friday. But the general strike will continue for an indefinite period after this first month. They will keep on till this plan is rejected, and a roundtable with citizens and different productive sectors is called to produce a new tax reform that supports workers.
And let's go to our colleague Mario Rosales, who's at the Guatemalan court following up on the so-called magic water case against the former vice president, Roxana Baldetti.
We are at the courtroom awaiting the trial of Roxana Baldetti, the former vice president of Guatemala, and 12 other people who are being charged with fraud against the state for $2.6 million. The case is popularly known as the Magic Water Project for the sanitation of Lake Amaticlan, but everything turned out to be a scam. They are looking at a potential 22 years in jail, but the verdict is yet to be seen.
We thank Mario for that report. 112 unidentified and unclaimed bodies have been buried in Mexico's Ciudad Juarez. The remains belong to 81 men, 4 women, and 27 fetuses. They had been in the local forensic medical service since 2017. The authorities believe the bodies have not been claimed for different reasons: lack of money to bury them, fear after a murder, or in the case of a fetus, they're the result of clandestine abortions.
Today we're witnessing the process of burying the corpses that remain in the forensic medical services in the identified status, which were previously genetically profiled and entered into the genetic database and cross-referenced with relatives looking for a missing family members that had a negative result in the cross-reference process.
Mexico's President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has promised small farmers that he will help them to reactivate the produce markets.
Juan Castillo headed to Mexico City to represent small farmers producers like him. He wants Andrés Manuel López Obrador to learn about the problems farmers face from the states of Chiapas and Oaxaca.
The seed time should take place in 2019 so we can follow the cycles for cacao, coffee, cinnamon, and axiote, and we don't have to wait another 6 years to start the harvest.
Aimed at recovering over 1 million hectares that are not currently productive, the program Growing Life by the upcoming government will try to solve the most urgent problems for farmers, such as soil erosion.
It's necessary to grow trees, fruit trees, to combine corn with these trees so they can help the soil and improve our land.
The purpose is also to have a positive impact on Mexico's economy. The program will have the support of experts, technicians, and will help young people with scholarships.
It should be highlighted that over 400,000 jobs will be created the next year, stable jobs.
The project, aimed at small farmers owning up to 5 hectares in the poorest regions of the country, will respect traditional way of farming.
We have to honor our traditions, and we have a debt to our farmers. We need to get ready to work, and we need to respect the traditional way of farming in combination with the new technologies.
It is estimated that around 1 million jobs in the agriculture sector have been lost during the last 25 years due to the lack of support and the struggles of the market.
We'll take another short break now, and we'll have more news after this.
We are present at every event of what our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Palestinians have gathered to protest once again in the Gaza Strip. At least 11 demonstrators were wounded by Israeli forces. They are protesting at the maritime border with Israel and are demanding an end to the blockade of the Strip. Citizens in Bulgaria are paying tribute to the murdered journalist Victoria Marinova. The 30-year-old TV anchor was found raped and murdered in a park. She had reported on an investigation into alleged corruption by local politicians and businessmen involving EU funds. Activists want the case to be solved and for justice to be served.
We have two demands. First, we want an independent international investigation on Victoria's murder and the corruption scandal GP Gate. The second demand is the immediate resignation of the main prosecutor, Sotir Satsarov, and the mafia government of Boyko Borisov.
And in Cameroon, opposition candidate Maurice Kamto is declaring victory in the presidential polls despite a government warning not to announce unofficial results. Kamto, in making the declaration, says he believes he achieved his goal in Sunday's vote. At a media conference, he also called on President Paul Biya to hand over power peacefully. Biya, who is 85, has ruled Cameroon for nearly 4 decades. Brett Kavanaugh has officially been sworn in at the U.S. Supreme Court as Justice. In a ceremony at the White House, Kavanaugh was accompanied by his family and President Donald Trump. Kavanaugh's nomination spread outrage across the country for his alleged involvement in a case of sexual assault. In spite of this, the Senate passed his nomination. Now let's have a look at some of the stories making headlines around the world.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has invited Pope Francis to visit Pyeongchang in a bid to push for peace, according to South Korean officials. A similar invitation for Pope John Paul II after an inter-Korean summit in 2000 never resulted in a visit. The Vatican and North Korea don't have diplomatic ties, as the latter is officially atheist. 2 days ahead of the deadline announced by the Indonesian government to cease search and rescue operations, at least 9 excavators have been digging in Sulawesi. The area was devastated by a strong earthquake and a falling tsunami in late September. The official death toll has risen to 2010, with most fatalities happening in the city of Palu due to the tsunami.
Hari ini, pukul 13.
Up until today, at 1 p.m., we recorded 2010 deaths from the earthquake and tsunami in central Sulawesi. 1,601 people died in Palu City. 171 people died in Donggala. 222 people died in Sigi. 15 people died in Parigi Montong. And in Pansankayu, which is in West Sulawesi, only 1 people died. Palu has the highest number of victims, mostly because of the tsunami.
An explosion has hit a munitions depot in the Chernihiv region in northern Ukraine, prompting officials to evacuate around 12,000 people. State security said there were about 2 to 3 explosions, and they are investigating possible sabotage angle, but the cause of the explosion is not yet known. No casualties have been reported so far.
Farmers in the Chinese city of Lishui in Zhejiang province are developing smart farms which allow vegetables to grow without soil. Plants are provided with all the nutrient solutions through an intelligent control system. A shorter growing season and a ban on pesticides also make smart farms more environmentally friendly. China consumes a daily average of 9.7 ounces of vegetables, and farming methods need to adapt to their rapidly growing population. Well, that story has brought us to the end of this newscast. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisiotv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talisio English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you for watching.